The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Schoology. Schoology's passion lies in helping instructors and students have the best education experience possible. Schoology is a collaborative, student-focused, and faculty-centered learning management system. Students love Schoology because it gives them 24/7 access to course materials, real-time feedback from their instructors, and easy-to-use collaborative tools. Teachers love the streamlined workflow, integrated apps such as Google and Microsoft tools, and the ability to view evidence of student learning for making instructional decisions. To learn more about what is possible with Schoology, simply visit Schoology.com.
I love that she doesn't give, you know what. Welcome to On Education. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will discuss playing video games instead of taking the SAT, a university that has offered free tuition to lower income students. Should we include students in teacher professional development? And our amazing guest this week is educator and instructional coach Nate Green.
So we have a swag shop, Glenn.
Yeah. That new logo is ridiculous. So amazing.
The new sticker.
Yeah, and I love it on all of this. I got to get myself a hoodie, t-shirts, maybe a coffee cup.
Awesome hoodie.
Yeah, there's coffee cups, there's pens, anything that you ever thought of. It has the On Education logo on it.
So, yeah, I mean, if you go to the website and go to the top, there's a new swag link and click on that. And, if you want something, buy it. If you don't, then, that's cool too. We get it. But I did inadvertently reveal our new sticker in the process because we put that new sticker on, or that new whatever on everything as well. So you can either get something with the On Education with the logo or with the new Stay Awesome sticker.
Yeah, I love that.
Or design. But that'll be a sticker as well. So we will be packed for where are we going? So where are we going this year? We're going to ISTE. We're going to Serious Games, both Montreal and Orlando.
Yes. Schoology next. I'll be there. So we'll separate.
Glenn will be at Schoology next.
Yeah, we'll separate and conquer. How do they call that?
Divide and conquer.
Yes.
FETC, we'll have stickers for FETC in Miami.
Excited.
Super exciting. We also have started to build out some sponsorship stuff. So if you're listening and you're a business, slide into our DMs.
Yeah, love it.
So what's going on? We've come across some pretty interesting, lots of news. This seems to be the news section now, but I think that's important. So there's lots going on. And this article has kind of made the rounds. I remember Spike sharing it, and I've seen Melissa talking about it now. It was shared on the Games for Ed hashtag. This article, what if instead of taking the SAT, you got to play a video game? And the big point of this video game is that the SAT is a terrible indication of almost anything, let alone your ability to be successful at university. Where this company and this person, I think her name is Rebecca Cantor, has developed a game simulation sort of assessment that assesses kind of the process and your decision making and your critical thinking skills. And I mean, it's preaching to the choir, but we obviously know that those are the things we actually need to be assessing, and not the garbage that's on the SAT, right?
Yeah, and it's also preaching to the choir that we know as people that play games and people that use games to actually instruct or use as instructional tools, that games, really good games, as we had talked about with Jordan Shapiro, include these elements, these problem solving, critical reasoning, collaboration, creativity, and empathy. We even have had guests that talk about those types of things. And what they want to know at a university level, yes, and at a business, is that you are highly skilled in these things. So how skilled are you in this? the environment too that they were describing, Mike, it just makes me want to actually go take that test so that we can go ahead and maybe we can get a hold of them or something and be able to do something like that. I don't know if it's a location based or something that you can get online, but
It'd be so fun to take it.
yeah, because I just the reaction that some people are coming out of it with, they're like, I played for an hour and a half, and they played the game to get a job or to get into a university, and they were full of adrenaline. They had the problem solved, and they had to learn from their mistakes and how well they did those things. It was multiple paths, and then the test assessors could then take a look at what they actually did, how they went about solving the problems to see where they're at on each of these skills. Which, I mean, what an awesome way to go ahead and take an exam is actually get in there, take play a video game, and how you do in this 3D simulation is it shows like what kind of skills you actually have. All of those things that unfortunately are called soft skills, but those are the essential skills.
I don't know how much of a critical mass is required for this stuff to become, the commonly accepted thing.
Yes.
But as two people that are kind of embedded in the conversations surrounding them, it really feels like the ground is shifting beneath our feet a little bit. I mean, when you read Jordan's book, where he talks about stuff that is so similar to this stuff.
Yes.
This idea that, so there's a quote here that is worth reading. Quote, I'm not saying that kids don't need to know history or math or biology. They do. But my thought is, can you move the North Star of the system a bit? You're still going to biology class and history class, but in those courses, there's a little less focus on specific modules of curriculum, unquote, rote memory. She's talking about rote knowledge and stuff like that, dates and times, and back to it, and more focus on practicing the thinking that's required for work and not just college. What I'm trying to do is reconnect K-12 education with the world of work and the reality of being an adult.
God, that's such a good quote.
Right. And the idea that we know what kids actually need to know, and we're still not teaching them that. We're still making them memorize the date of Confederation in Canada. What day did Canada become a country, and and not looking up, not teaching. And you're going to hear later in the podcast our conversation with Nate Green, and where we're going to literally talk about the idea that it's not about the knowledge, it's about where to find the knowledge.
Yes.
And collecting the information and gathering it. And I was literally talking to my father about this just yesterday. He came by for a visit, and Jordan's book was sitting out, and his wife grabbed it, and we were talking about it, and we were trying to convince my dad that that the world is changing. Yes. And that kids don't need to know, these rote pieces of information. They need to just know where to find it when they're looking for it.
Yes.
It's what we heard at ISTE last year with the keynote as well, this idea of neuroplasticity and how our brains are actually changing. And the way our kids' brains are totally different than our brains, because the actual chemical physical requirements of knowledge are different now than they were 50 years ago. So many fascinating things. You can go into a rabbit hole just off of offshoots of this article, but I think it's just common sense, right?
Yeah, it's such common sense, and then it's also the reality is exploding in our faces. Like you said, it's happening right in front of us. Either we can ignore it, or we can take a hold of it and say, how do we adjust to fit this, what's happening, and then make sure that we are doing our due diligence as educators for our students, for their future, not for how we experienced our education or the past or whatever it might be, but for their future.
Speaking of students' future, segue.
Yes, nice segue.
Right? The key of segues is to not mention the segue.
Oops.
Anyways, the University of Tennessee is giving free tuition to lower income students. Obviously, this is a good thing, right?
Absolutely. And if you don't know, as far as the low income that they're considering is household incomes of less than $50,000 a year. If you think about that, that's going to include a lot of people, which is, I think, amazing.
Single parents.
Oh my goodness. I just so many students. If they have their tuition waived and they get free tuition there, I mean, they're still going to have to pay for room and board or any of those types of things, those other cost books. But to waive the tuition, fantastic. The president of the university said it's that school isn't just for the wealthy or the elite. It's the exact opposite of that, those articles from last week, the fascination with these super rich people and them basically scamming their way into really elite schools. This is the exact opposite. And I'm hoping that more state schools, because the University of Tennessee is legit. I mean, this is not like some little community college. This is a gigantic university. And so if more state schools do this, we've got something, we've got something powerful there and more opportunity for more students to go ahead and attend university without the thought process of incurring a massive amount of debt or just saying, I can't afford this, so I'm going to go ahead and do something different.
It's absolutely fantastic. How about this as the most classic case of student voice that I've probably ever seen in my life? Teachers in a PD session, developing lessons and unit plans and getting feedback on them, not from, their supervisors or the principals or the tech coaches or the instructional coaches, but from students who were sitting with them and assessing their lessons and whether they were any good. Here's how to make them more interesting. How they could be more reliable, how they could help struggling students. Pretty brilliant. It's brilliant.
It's brilliant, and it's also risk-taking.
It's brave.
Yeah, very brave that the district is willing to do something like this, that the teachers are willing to go ahead and have this panel of 100 students listen to whatever it is that they were presenting and then give them feedback on it and then act on that feedback too. And that itself is super powerful, really involve them. Talk about, like you just said, student voice. My goodness, you have the voice of the students in the development process of the lessons being presented in class. It's just fantastic. It's
pretty amazing. Yeah. Last fun note here was, we've brought up, what Apple does, and when they make big announcements, we cover them, we talk about them. Our first episode, to come full circle, we'll talk about that in a minute, but to come full circle, our first real published episode was covering a big Apple education event. And one of the interesting things that came out of that very first episode in that first event was a conversation about the new Logitech stylus and how it was supposed to work like the Apple Pencil, but be cheaper.
Yes.
And then what happened over the last year was that a couple more iPads came out, including one recently, but the Logitech Crayon was remaining only compatible with that one iPad that came out a year ago.
Yeah.
And so what's happened now is in the iPads that were just announced last week, the Logitech Crayon is not only compatible with them, but these new iPads are cheaper. And it looks like some sort of a deal is happening where the Logitech Crayon stylus will be made less expensive if schools purchase it.
Yeah.
So this is what we were talking about. We were literally saying, if you can combine a cheap, awesome stylus with an iPad, that's a pretty damn powerful tool in a classroom.
Yeah.
For a lot of things.
Do you think, Mike, too, the new app or iPad is the one where it connects to charge up at the top? It has like this little magnetic kind of thing where it snaps onto the top, right? I wonder if this also has that ability. Because I was wondering about it. You know what I'm talking about, where it's for the charging.
Yeah, no, I do, because I have a new
Yeah.
iPad Pro and I have the new pencil, and yeah, it snaps to the side.
Outside, yeah.
and then it charges super fast
Yeah.
too. I don't know if the Logitech Crayon. Maybe someone can, when they hear this, they can send us a message on the tweeters with whether the Logitech Crayon connects to the side of the Apple of the iPad or not. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, because we were talking about, on that first episode, we were talking about that one of the things we were concerned about is to have $100 pencil, because that's what the Apple Pencil costs, and then trying to be keeping track of those things. I mean, if it doesn't matter what kind of students you're working with, oh my goodness, it's a nightmare keeping track of these kinds of things, especially something as small as that. But I would think that if it was something that where you could connect it very easily, or if somehow we had a case, and I'm sure somebody's figured out something interesting to this, where you could snap it into the thing and then you'd have it right there. But basically to charge half the cost of the pencil, so $50, and then include, if we were distributing our iPads to our students, and then we had these Apple pencils. I'm telling you that these pencils, and I think we should try out this Logitech Crayon to see, because all the reviews I've been reading have said it's phenomenal. It's equivalent. So we need to try it out, because if it is equivalent, then we need to get it into the hands of our students, because me and you both have the pencil, and it is ridiculous how amazing and it simulates actual writing.
It's
and then
so
it gives
weird to gush about a stylus, but once you try, you realize that this is really, really damn good.
It's amazing. Yeah. And you go in there and you start trying to draw things, with the different Procreate or whatever the types of apps are. You're just blown away by the ability and how it simulates a real pencil and pen or whatever it might be. And if this actually does the same, this Logitech Crayon, man, it's going to make a gigantic difference. And I think it's that cross section. Even when we're thinking about what devices should we be purchasing on our next purchase for our students, even at the high school level, we've talked about the iPad Pro and the pencil instead of having the MacBook, because what it does is it gives you that ability to kind of have the go between. We still like to write, and there's still research that says that if you're writing something out instead of typing it, that there's something happening inside of our brains. Like that whole thing about sketchnoting that you talked about too, Mike, that you're really fascinated with. And there's something powerful about that. Having our students be able to actually take notes on paper, or in this case, digitally, there's something powerful about that. And to make it cheaper and make it more affordable for our school districts, can't wait to see these.
Very cool. Speaking of very cool, we didn't actually mention it at the top of the show, but this is our 50th episode.
Woo! 50 episodes in, baby.
Which is pretty wild. 50th full-length episode. We have other, like in the list on Apple, there'll be, it's in the 55, 56, somewhere around there. But this is, I think, our 50th full-length episode. So when we come back, we thought we would talk about what's happened over the last 50 episodes or so, and review some of our favorite moments and our favorite guests. So stay tuned.
Quests. One of Classcraft's most popular features, with over 100,000 lessons created by teachers and 3 million learning objectives completed by students so far, is now part of Classcraft's free offerings. In 2019, your students won't just be learning multiplication, chemistry, or any other content. They'll be saving the kingdom. Transform your lessons into adventures with Quests today. Visit classcraft.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. 50 episodes in. We've come a ways. I'll tell you, we wanted to talk, I guess, a little bit about, how far we've come, because that's, I suppose, a pretty interesting story in and of itself. We didn't know how to do any of this a year and a half ago at all. Didn't know what you needed.
Nope.
Didn't know what software to use.
You had a completely different mic, too.
A completely different, quite a bit more terrible mic. We've learned a lot. But, that first episode, the one that no one's heard, the infamous...
Oh, yeah, the infamous,
the infamous beta episode, which actually, from a content perspective, is really quite good.
It's a really powerful episode. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked with Connor Crop, who is a student in Minnesota who Glen knew, about guns in schools. We were literally, what was it, coming off of Parkland, or just a year out of Parkland?
Yeah, no, it was coming off of Parkland, maybe a month afterwards. I'm gonna say, yep.
So we had that conversation, and it was really interesting. Editing that episode was a nightmare, to say the least. All of the audio files were out of sync because Zencaster is terrible. And
we learned a lot.
I almost threw my laptop out the window trying to edit it.
This is all true too. That's what people don't understand, is that the editing process and the whole entire thing was just a learning experience. Let's call it that. Yeah.
An exercise in patience.
Yes.
But what came out of that was, I loved that we were able to send that to our friends.
Yes. We
got honest feedback, which is super important. I didn't want people to just give us the garbage, oh, this is great, congratulations, keep up the good work nonsense, because we knew it wasn't, as good as we can do it.
Yes.
And
we needed the feedback.
I wanted people to actually be honest with us, and people were. And so we got an engineer. We hired someone who we, for the better part of the next year, Jake was editing and engineering our episodes for us. Jake was super helpful. We'll give him a shout out on Twitter, because haven't talked to him in a while. But he helped me choose, microphones and talk about sound, and gave us feedback on the quality of the audio, which I haven't listened to one of the very first episodes in quite a while. I probably wouldn't want to at this point, mostly because of audio quality.
We'll be cringing,
right? Because I think at this point now we've really landed the audio quality pretty well. People, even today, I got a DM on Twitter about starting a podcast, and this is happening to both of us pretty frequently now. And one of the things I tell people, and I say it a lot now, is that this is really easy to do. It's really hard to do really well, is kind of what I say. And one of the reasons why we're working so hard, I'm still putting in, 15 to 20 hours a week into the podcast stuff. And it's because, we want to do this well. I didn't just want to do it. I didn't just want to, grab my cell phone and make a recording and then throw it out on Anchor. And you can do that. And frankly, you should do that. If you have things to say, you should be saying them, and nothing should stop you from doing that. We wanted to do something different here. And I'll tell you, the reception has been unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. I guess favorite moments, Mike, I was thinking about just when we started realizing that there was actually a lot of people that listened to specific episodes. I think it happened especially at ISTE, but even before that, it happened quite a few times. ISTE last year, where we started getting some unbelievable amounts of listens and people subscribing, and then people just giving us feedback, like this positive feedback, and the audience grew massively. It grew from, like you just said, our family, friends, and kind of close people in our PLN, to people that we didn't even know, and it continues to grow today, which is just absolutely phenomenal and mind blowing as we continue the process to try to go ahead and increase the audience here.
I'll tell you, FETC this year was awesome in a lot of ways, but one of the things that I think you're going to see us lean into as a group, as a podcast, is the idea that at FETC, people just wanted to come and hang out with us and just sit. In some cases, they just needed a place to sit and have some good conversations and hang out, where they didn't feel like they, had to be on, which is also a thing with some of these ed tech kind of leaders and people who are respected and looked up to and stuff like that, they have to be on a lot. And I'm finding that with me, and you find that with you now too, with the way that things have changed over the last year, that we created a space for people that they could just sit and take a load off and then just chit chat
and just have conversations about anything.
We weren't recording.
Just have fun.
We were just talking, hanging out. And so I think that you're going to see us in particular lean into that dynamic a little bit, where not only are we getting some of the best guests, like guests that I couldn't even believe that we, like, I know. We talked to Jordan freaking Shapiro a couple weeks ago.
I know. Like, it was just amazing. I know. It's crazy.
Like, not only are we getting, like, and like Carl Hooker, who I idolized for the better part of a decade, you know, and some of these other people, you know, but some of them just want to hang out and chill and have fun and then go out for drinks and dinner later. And that we did all of that. And I think you're going to see us lean into that. So FETC 2019 was probably my top, like easily my top moment of the last year, of the last 50 episodes. And the way we established ourselves is just, you know, we're chill. We're different than a lot of the other podcasts. That's for sure. But I think we found, you know, our voice, and that's the most important thing, is that we're not like everyone else, and we don't necessarily want to be. And it's about finding your own voice,
and it's totally authentic too, Mike. I mean, that's who we really are. We didn't have to, like you just said, we didn't have to pretend or, you know, or be on or whatever it might be. We were just being ourselves, and that's really the best part of these conferences, is sitting down with people and being able to just learn from them and with them, you know, and really get to hear some interesting, deeper thoughts about whatever, or just being able to just hang out and enjoy each other's company for, you know, who we actually are.
One of the things I've been learning I've been thinking about it a lot and posting about it on Twitter a decent amount too, is this idea of, for me specifically and personally, finding, you know, my own voice and the way that I want to interact with people in out there. And I guarantee you, I say things on this podcast that people don't agree with. For sure, like, you know, right. But I don't think I need to, and I'm not going to feel pressured to. I'm going to tell you what I believe in, and I'm going to welcome the conversations if you disagree. And that's, I think, one of the fun things about doing this, is that, you know, if you disagree with me, tell me. Let's talk about it. Let's have these conversations, because that's also
the whole point of the show. Yeah,
it's also exactly what we wanted to do. I'm still waiting for that Betsy DeVos defender to come on the podcast and just explain what the hell's going on over there, because, you know, in a lot of cases we just don't know, and they're certainly not articulating their position super well to the rank and file teachers, and so, you know, we want contrary opinions. I don't have a problem debating with people, obviously, and so, you know, I think that hopefully, as we continue to grow, that kind of progresses too. That would be awesome. Favorite interviews?
Yeah.
So we love them all. They're all our special flowers. But
that's what you say about your students.
Sure. Yeah. But I have to say that, you know, ranking them was tough, but we kind of did a top three, because I think it was fun to even just sit back and think about the people we've talked to. Mm-hmm. So my top three and your top three are very similar, to be honest, which is hilarious. You can see, I
had a top four.
Yeah, you kind of have a top four. So first off, I still pinch myself every couple minutes that we talk to Jordan Shapiro.
Yes, that's my number one too.
Right, the guy's freaking brilliant. I actually was on Twitter yesterday and had like a super long conversation with him on Twitter about literacy and reading. And I was with my father and stepmother, and I said, I can't believe that this is my life now, that I can just get on Twitter and talk to someone that, is one of the most preeminent scholars on education and educational technology on the planet, and he'll answer my tweets. And I knew he would.
Yes.
And that is such a strange existence to live in now. So anyways, Jordan Shapiro, pretty rad. Such a great conversation. We definitely encourage you, if you haven't listened to these ones, you should go back and look them up. Both of us have Paul Darvazi on our list now. We're like presidents of the Paul Darvazi fan club.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't surprise you.
If you don't know or follow Paul,
right,
and follow his work, because I mean, he's not on Twitter a whole bunch, but you should go on to anything that he's actually written. And even though you may not do the things that he's done, which are revolutionary, they're like 15, 20 years, I think, down the road already thinking 100%. About those types of things, you can at least get a sense for how you would incorporate alternate reality gaming or augmented reality. How would you incorporate game-based learning in a completely different way of thinking about it too. His writing is amazing. So he wrote for us for the blog. He's written in all kinds of different online platforms, but my goodness, go look him up and just start reading some of his stuff. And I think you'll be inspired by him.
So you had Jordan and Paul sharing the number 1 slot. Talk about your number 2.
My number 2 is actually Rafranz Davis. And what's funny, the reason why I like that interview so much is actually you and Rafranz's conversation, which has continued for the last year, I think. And any kind of conversation about that rock group or the pop group. What is it called?
Oh, you don't know the name?
Yeah, I can't even think of what it's called. Yes. Okay. So when you guys were having this conversation, it was a moment too that I thought of. We're not like any other type of education podcast. I think that because we're actually just having a conversation specifically, we knew that this was her big passion. Yeah. Though she is, I would say, nationally known and followed as an ed tech leader. She is, and she is. Spoke and keynoted all kinds of big, gigantic edtech conferences. But the conversation she was having with us was about this passion that she had. And then she was able to go full circle and say, here's how it connects to education. And then she delivered. That told me right there, we're different than most any other podcast I've ever listened to. And I listened to a whole bunch of them. Education podcasts, ed tech podcasts, and because we're not just focused on the tools and the tech and the this and whatever it might be, we're also just having conversations with people about their passions that are in education, in ed tech spaces. And I think that just differentiated us right at that moment.
Well, one of the things that we both know for sure is that our passions inform our work. It's why we're both games-based learning, experts. It's why we talk about gamification, because this is what we're passionate about. And I guarantee you that K-pop is informing Rafranz's work in many, many ways. And she's articulating it on Twitter. And I'm there, Rafranz. I'm all in on BTS. And we love that. I love that she doesn't give, what, she's talking about what she wants to talk about on her platform, about what she's passionate about. And listen, as a guy that, again, is looking to find his voice and learn from people who are doing that, she's an awesome example of that.
Big time.
We both share number 3.
Yes, Don Wettrick.
Our man Don Wettrick, who has turned into a bit of a friend and even a good sage advice giver from time to time. But Don, how do I say this? Don knows a lot about a lot of things.
Yes,
and he's not afraid of telling you his opinion on things. And it kind of reminds me of me a little bit, and that's maybe I could listen. I've said this to a bunch of people lately. I could sit and listen to Don talk about whatever the hell Don wants to talk about, as long as Don wants to talk about it. I'm there for it. And we went out for dinner at the second night we were at FETC, and it's just like, Don, just talk to us, and and we just listened constantly, and he was giving us advice, and we were sharing with him some of our plans and ideas, and he was actually dead on about a couple things, and I actually reached out to him just a couple weeks ago about an issue I was having, and he was like, he completely called it, and we were talking about that. So these 3 or 4 folks, Shapiro, Davazi, Rafans Davis, Don Wettrick, these are pretty awesome conversations we've had over the last 50 episodes. We've had a lot of other amazing ones. I mean, the list is pretty
amazing, yeah,
huge. I'll tell you, this one you're about to hear in a few minutes,
it's so
Nate
good.
Green is going to absolutely crack our top 5. We'll see, but man, oh man, is it ever good.
Yes.
So when we come back, we'll be joined by Nate Green. All right, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're thrilled to be joined by Nate Green. Nate is a technology and instructional coach from Flint Hill School in Virginia. Welcome to the podcast, Nate.
It's good to be here.
Nate, before we get started, let's do a quick introduction. Could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, what your background is?
Yeah, as Mike said, I'm currently the technology and instructional coach at Flint Hill School, and I teach 2 classes. One is on social media and one is on the internet. And I was formerly a history teacher for a number of years, a basketball coach, a lacrosse coach, and I just made the transition into doing technology stuff a couple years ago. So I'm relatively new to that, but I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about teenagers and social media. So that's my passion project, if you will. I'm excited to talk about that a little with you guys today.
That's awesome. So Nate, I first got in contact with you after reading your article, and it's called Why EdTech Specialists Should Focus on Transformation, Not Tools. And in the article, you state teachers tend to seek out specialists for a technological solution, and these interactions are transactional rather than transformational. And after reading the article, I wanted to learn more about how you actually did that. Can you talk us through the system that was successful for you and your teachers in your district?
Sure, I'd love to. So I set out to sort of codify, if you will, what a good piece of technology integration looks like in the classroom. And I connected with a colleague of mine, Sam Moser, who on Twitter is at Moser Tech Teach, so you can find him, who works at the more lower middle school levels, and I work at the high school level. And we said, well, what is a good technology integration program look like? So we wrote that article for EdSurge, and we said it's 4 things. Every one of these integrations has collaborative instruction, authentic engagement, applicative risk-taking, and sustained interest and engagement. And the reason we built that is because we got sort of tired as tech coaches of getting a quick question from a faculty member that's more along the lines of tech help, tech support,
yes,
than it is on good pedagogy and good teaching. And so we called that a transaction. A transaction is, Nate, how do I use Google Forms to self-grade? And I'm like,
solve my problem right now. This is the problem I have. How do we fix it?
And listen, I'm not going to turn those people away. I'm like, yeah,
right.
Here's how you do it. But I got tired of that, and so did my colleague Sam. And so we said, well, how do we avoid those in the future? And that's where I use the word transformation, which is I hope that you're using technology to rethink the way that you're teaching, so that it's developing skills and it's following good pedagogy, and it's not just like a quick shortcut for a teacher here or there, or like a shiny object to get someone off their back and make it sound like they're doing something tech savvy. So that's where that article came from and what we did. In terms of how that's worked, I try my best to make those things happen every time I connect with a teacher. It's really, really hard to do that, though.
For sure.
And I would say sort of one way to think of it in as few words as possible is we got obsessed in the early 2010s, I guess, with when I first started getting into ed tech with demo slams and appy hours, and we got real into ed tech, and it was, shiny object we all jumped on. And actually, I think the way in which we should be integrating tech is more thinking about the coaching model or a cohort model, or classroom visits, or stuff that's, again, built off of a solid foundation of good pedagogy. So actually, that's what should be driving technology integration rather than our infatuation with ed tech.
Very, very well said.
So Glenn and I are both super active Twitter users and active on quite a bit of other social media platforms. We both have family that live, kind of far away. We understand the power of social media when it comes to connecting people, both our friends and family, but also the power it gives educators in terms of learning from each other. What isn't talked about as much, though, is social media's potential in the actual classroom. My wife, actually, we were literally, it's funny, we were just talking about it the other day, how she missed Vine, because she used to use Vine in the class all the time. Right. And her only role was not to show the kids' faces, but she's a kindergarten teacher, and she had all the parents of all of her students following her on Vine and watching their kids do awesome stuff in the class. So I've seen a really good example, actually, of how social media could be used in the classroom. Can you spend a bit of time talking about kind of the power and potential of social media as a teaching and learning tool in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'll do it through sort of the scope of the way we use it. So we use it for a personalized learning network, right? So we have all these amazing educators on Twitter that teach us cool things that they're doing in the classroom, innovative ideas they have, and things that we can pick up from them, and it makes us better teachers. And I was doing that in, again, sort of early 2010s when I was talking about the shiny ed tech stuff. I love that ed tech hashtag. I loved reading teachers' blogs. And I got really, really deep into that stuff. And then I had a really simple thought. And I was like, well, if I can do this to become a better teacher, why can't my students use this to get good at whatever their passions are? So that's where I got this idea for my website, which is socialmediamarketplace.org. I call it passion-based learning through social media. And I say to my students, you can build up a personalized learning network about whatever you want to get good at. That can be academic enrichment, something you get better at in your classes. That can be civic engagement, or that could be, career opportunities. So then I put this to the test, and I taught a mass media class at a summer course with no one breathing down my neck, total autonomy. And I built it. I said, if you're going to go into media, here's 100 Twitter feeds of what the media landscape looks like right now. And I'm talking about, journalism, audio, video production, and all that kind of stuff, graphic design. And then for each kid, I said, by the end of this course, you should have a personalized learning network about whichever aspects of this media landscape that you found most interesting. So for example, my student Wes then spins off and he goes, Mr. Green, I love the film unit. I was like, well, here's producers, directors, actors, studios, et cetera. This is where you need to be. Before you know it, he had a Tumblr blog and he was writing about horror films, and then he had a YouTube page where he's reviewing films, and now he's on a whole social media app dedicated to film nerds called Letterboxd. And he's going to be applying for jobs soon, and that's going to give him a leg up on everyone else. So when I figured I could do that in mass media, I then tried it in my history classroom, and now I built my own class called Passion-Based Learning Through Social Media, where that's how I run my class. And again, it came from my own interest and my own, professional development on Twitter as a teacher.
I had never once thought of having students develop PLNs for themselves.
Oh, come on.
I'm like, you're blowing my mind. I'm seriously going, why didn't I think of this? Because I'm the guy that was pushing against the tide at school when I was at my school about social media and opening it up and letting kids and teachers and everyone use it. But I never thought of using it in that context. And, just another example of, the things we learn from each other. Man, oh, man.
It's a brilliant idea. Tell us more about that course that you were just describing.
I guess I'll tell it through a couple of my students, through their lenses. So that I gave you Wes as an example when I was teaching mass media. And I found I could do the same thing in my history class. I taught a contemporary world history class. And I said, if you want to know what's going on in international news, here's 100 plus Twitter feeds. There you go. And I found that my students several years later were still checking it when they wanted to be informed about a global event or what's going on.
That's awesome.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So those experiences drove me to create passion-based learning through social media and to build this website, which I kept telling people, hey, I don't care what you're passionate about. You got to build a PLN and get good at it. And it's one thing to learn online. You also have to contribute. You have to be understood as a learner in that space. And so I built a skills chart that says learn, curate, create, share, collaborate, lead. And I say in my class, you have to hit these skills, but the content is up to you. So I had a kid who was like, well, I want to be an architect, but there's no architecture class at Flint Hill. And I was like, that's okay. There's architects out there that are showing off their work and their blueprints and talking about stuff and collaborating. Go find it. And he did. And then he started making his own he found the apps that he should play around with and where he should start building his first blueprints, and he put it on the web, and he became a contributor to that space. Or I had another student whose name is Belle, and she was like, well, there's no marketing class, but I want to be a marketing major. I was like, well, why would you wait to college to figure out if you're interested in marketing or not? So she built the website and she built a network, and she did it through her own sort of like angle, which is just like marketing for teens, and she's like, well, here's what my friends who are teenagers, here's how they act and interact online. So if you're in marketing, here's how to capture this audience. And it's a perspective that she has that those who are professionals in the marketing field don't have. So in that sense, it's really amazing what these kids can come up with once they go through that skills progression I was talking about earlier. So that's what the course is about. And that's what drove me to build this website. And I really strongly believe in it. And I hope that I also believe that this can apply to every course, which is why I started by talking about how I could do this in my history classes. And I want to see more educators doing it. It's
an inversion of the role of the teacher. You're a curator of knowledge instead of just the person that's imparting. Teachers don't know. Hey, newsflash, teachers don't know everything, right? And I mean, don't even necessarily need to be the smartest person in the room about a subject. When I started teaching graphic design, I quickly realized that my kids were doing way more graphic design stuff at home on their own than I was teaching them in class. And I had kids whose graphic design chops were just blowing me out of the water because it's what they were interested in. They were seeking out their own learning it. I mean, that's how I learned graphic design. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a history major. I learned how to use Photoshop from watching videos on YouTube. It's basically just telling kids to do the same thing, but being the mentor that guides them, right?
Right, and let me ground this in a few things as well, if I may. One is we in schools are worried about what our kids are doing online. In 2015, Common Sense Media said teenagers spend 9 hours a day consuming media. So obviously we got to reduce that, but assuming that's a given. I'll give you one more stat, which is I read recently in The Atlantic that 91% of 2-year-olds already have a digital footprint by the time they're 2. So our kids already have these digital footprints. They're already spending all this time online. And it's like, and we as teachers, we ask them to come into our classes as active, informed citizens, right? And I would call that digital citizenship when they act that way online. And yet we don't ask them to act that way online. When they turn in papers for us, we say everything that you cite, you got to be media literate, right? But then we don't make them act that way online. And the same thing would be to digital portfolios, right? We say, well, you got to have this resume that we're going to send out to colleges to get you in, but then we don't care what your digital resume looks like. So I don't understand why in education then we're making them do all these things, and then as soon as they bury their head in their phone or their screen, we're letting them off the hook completely, and we're letting them act differently and do what they want, et cetera. So if you want to solve, make a digital footprint into a digital portfolio, you want to make them digital citizens and media literate students online, well, then they have to be following something they care about. And your example there, Mike, is such a good one, which is like these kids legitimately cared about graphic design and they got good at it on their own. And if that's what they're doing online, do we really have to worry if they're reading a bad source or posting something dumb? No, they're not. They're doing amazing work. And the other thing that you're getting at, which is something I say every time I speak, is we need our kids creating more than they consume. And I actually read something recently: create more than spectate. I like that way of putting it. So if we can get our kids doing that online, we also solve all of the big buzzwords in educations like digital citizenship and media literacy and those things as well. So again, I think you can't solve those things without teaching social media. And so that's why I'm trying to bring social media into more classes to solving those problems as an offshoot of bringing social media into our curriculum.
Amazing. Nate, how can people connect with you? Plug your website again, share your Twitter handle. Where can people reach out and get in touch with you?
Glad to do it. My website is socialmediamarketplace.org. And it's my effort. I think there's like 40 interests on there. And I also have one for each department. And if you click on it, it spits back to you Twitter and Facebook accounts to follow if you're interested in that. So say you click on the technology link. It'd be Twitter and Facebook accounts that would make you learn more about that. Instagram feeds, YouTube, podcasts, et cetera. So I did that for a lot of interests, but also I hope that teachers will build their own versions of that. And you can also find me on Twitter. I'm Mr. Shakedown, MR Shakedown. And I'm always talking about this stuff, always talking about the intersection of education and social media. So find me there. And if you're interested in bringing social media into your classroom, definitely hit me up. I'm more than happy to help. Again, it's my PLN that started this work of mine, so I always like to build it up and continue to help others.
Fantastic.
Nate Green, everyone, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to On Education. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glen is at Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd love if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in the Apple Podcast or Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost, and this helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Schoology, for supporting us. Check out Schoology.com to learn how they can help you advance what's possible. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome, and we'll see you soon.